Hello, welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real metaphysical and occult knowledge so that you can manifest real and tangible results in your life. This week, we're going to continue our Mage Minded series, and we're going to continue it with a topic that I'm willing to bet a lot of people do not consider when it comes to magic or walking a path of a mage or any or most paths for that matter. And that's actually, we're going to talk a little bit about honor, okay? Now, before you flip out on me, honor does actually have an effect on your magic, and we will be touching on that. So, one of the things we do want to get out straight out of the gate is honor does not come from a rigid code of bullet points, something like the Ten Commandments, or I mean, even in Conway's book, she has the Dragon Code of Honor or whatever. Though a rigid code like that forces you to follow it into almost robotic like sense, that's not honor. Okay, that is not honor, and we're going to get into that. That being said, though, there are a few things that do definitely fall into the honor category. It does definitely distinguish a person and set them aside. It definitely shows a strength of character. It shows strength of their actions. It can govern their actions, and actually, it should govern their actions. In all honesty, one thing that honor is, it's not just hey, look, I got these cute little sayings that I have over here, and this is what I follow, right? It's actually something you live every day, and you try to hold yourself accountable, right? If whatever you view as your honor, your code of honor, if you only do it when other people are looking, that's not honor, that's ego, okay? And if you want to see ego, look at Hollywood, right? Actually, look at history. There are a lot of documented cases of people being slighted or insulted or something like that, and having a honor because somebody impugned their honor, right? No, that's not honor. That is again pride and ego. Okay. If you have to beat someone up or duel them because they insulted you, that's your ego that was wounded, not your honor. That is a very, very important distinction. Your honor is not really something that can directly be wounded by anyone but you. You're the one that can do the damage to your own honor. That's for sure. Um, but honor is something that it governs your keen sense of right and wrong and your adherence to actions and principles in your life. Okay. Now, notice I said that keen sense of right and wrong, your keen sense of right and wrong. Now, depending on the circles you travel, yes, I'd say a lot of people that you hang out with that you view as honorable, you all will share very similar aspects of what you view as right or wrong, and those things may align. Then again, there are people out there who will have very, very drastically deviating things that they would view as right or wrong. And in this case, this is where honor does become a little flexible. Even as you grow and you change, you learn, you gain more wisdom. What you view as right or wrong, or why you view it, that might shift and change too. And then there's the fact that the world around us also shifts and change. We have to adapt to that. I actually heard honor once applied to the situation where you have two skilled fighters. One faces a challenge fearlessly because they have the confidence in their skill set and they know they're going to win. And then you have another individual who faces the challenge head on, even though they're terrified of it because it's the right thing to do. The second one is the one that would actually have honor, because the first one, if they weren't confident they would win, they wouldn't fight. They're only fighting because they're sure they can win. Honor can put you in a situation doing what's right. You may not come out on top. It's that doing what's right, regardless of the situation, is the hard part when we talk about honor. Okay, it really is. Any questions so far on what that basis? I want to make sure we're all on the same page, at least for that. Now, of course, we have discussed knowing yourself and those kinds of concepts earlier, and that's all building into this for sure. And honor definitely takes courage. You will have to cultivate courage in your life if you wish to live as an individual of honor, because I'll be honest with you. In my life, more often than not, anytime I act honorably and I act in that way, I find myself standing alone. That's just the way it is. There are rare occasions where individuals who share my beliefs are with me. And yes, it's great to have that. But most of the time, you stand alone and you will face the ridicule of standing alone. And I've even faced that from my very family. Okay. I have had to stand alone in the worst of situations and flat out say no. And my family's absolutely siding against me because it would be easier. It would be more productive in their minds to not take the stand I take. And that's okay. They're welcome to have that. I don't begrudge them for it, but you will stand alone, and that will take courage, point blank. Um, so do be prepared in those cases. And now, like I did say, we did talk about integrity on here. I can't remember if we've covered respect yet. I think we have. But courage, integrity, respect, all these things are things that you are going to have to cultivate, right? And one of the things, this is one that where a lot of people drop the ball when it comes to attempting to live honorably, and that is showing respect, actually showing respect to others. And this doesn't mean others you agree with. This doesn't mean others you like. This means showing respect to others, right? When you meet them, you try to give them respect. Does that mean they're going to give you respect back? No, but you do try to act respectfully toward them because you are showing respect to their existence. You are showing respect to the fact that they are alive. And that respect actually does reflect on you. It shows how you treat people. And that is an honorable act. And I'll be honest, that is something this day and age is just lacking entirely. The very few people actually take the time to treat each other with respect. And that is something that's missing. And the number of times I've heard someone say, well, they don't deserve respect. Treating someone with respect is not about what they deserve. It's about who you are. So if you don't think they're worth being treated with respect, what you're saying is you don't have respect for yourself. Understand that first and foremost. Straight up. That's the situation you have put yourself in. And that is the situation you'll be judged on by other people. And it sucks, but it's honestly the case. All right. Also, honor deals with our obligations and sense of justice. Okay. Now, justice, that one we can get into deeper on another level, probably another topic. Obligations, I do want to touch on here. Okay. Because obligations means if you have an obligation, if you have a responsibility, if you have a duty, in the form of honor, you can look at obligation as duty. This is your duty to do, not anyone else's, it's yours. Most people in their life, they know it's their obligation to pay bills, pay their taxes, feed their family, basic stuff like that. However, there is a larger obligation, the obligation to your community, the obligation to your fellow man, obligation, those obligations. One who lives with honor, obviously, those are big obligations to them. There's also the obligation to repay debt. And I don't mean just financial debt. Like I have set and I've gotten my ass chewed out a lot discussing honor when it comes to things like if I get my neighbor to help me mow the yard or do some weed eating or something like that, I technically have a debt. I have a duty to repay that debt. A thank you does not count. Technically speaking, a thank you card doesn't count. There's an obligation there to repay that in equal kind in some way. Now, that does get fuzzier because your neighbor could consider you making a rack of ribs absolutely 100% legitimately. That's payment. They love your ribs, right? That's fine. But it's got to be more than you see what I'm saying? You actually have to reciprocate in kind. You got to keep that flow going. That's actually kind of important in that concept of honor. And that's a place with respect, honestly, we drop respect first. But when it comes to obligations and duty, that's the next one this day and age where we drop hard. And I say I get chewed out on that all the time because I'm that person where I would help my neighbors. I wouldn't think anything of it. I wouldn't think they owed me anything, or I would get their help and I would do something tiny to make sure they know I appreciated it. But if we're looking at it through a lens of honor, not a neighborly thing, did I do enough? And honestly, I think sometimes I fall short there. I really do. And I know certain colleagues definitely think I fall short there. My neighbors seem to not think so, but my colleagues do. So it's an interesting little philosophical back and forth that you have to meditate on there for sure. All right. So those are a few things. And we do have a few quotes. And for those who've heard me talk about the book Modern Bushido, he does a really good job of laying some of this stuff out and give you some ideals to think about. And he does also interweave it in with so many of the other topics. Now, he obviously is viewing this from the perspective of a warrior more than a mage. And he does strictly state in there that a warrior needs to base their sense of right and wrong, their sense of honor, on all the categories and topics and discussions that are laid out in the book Modern Bushido. And to that extent, I would say I agree. I do. Now, if you want to get to a debate on what's the difference between a warrior and a mage, there's a good discussion to there. And perhaps that would be a great topic at some point, because for me, the way I live my life, I am more of a mage, but I do live my life more on that sense of the warrior side just because of who raised me, right? I wasn't raised by a mage or a practitioner. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're completely separated. A lot of those things do come into play there. And if nothing else, it's a great starting point for any mage, right? Because that self mastery, that discipline, they all build into our magic. We just take it deeper in some cases. And this is why honor is, in my opinion, very, very important for a mage. And that's over the years, I've noticed something. And this is really important when you start dealing with invocation and evocation or working with an entity in any way, even if it's basic prayer. Okay. The mage who genuinely lives their life with honor will have better results. And here's why. Here's why. If your honor is just something that's convenient, you put it on the shelf, you only pull it off when you need it, like a tool. Okay. It's only there when you need it. You only apply it when you need it. You are faking it. You're a fake, 100% fake. Honor is something you live daily, every day, regardless of anyone's there, regardless if anyone's seeing you. This is something that embodies you. Okay. It's all about you. You are the one that carries this honor. So if it's something you put on the shelf and only use it occasionally, you're faking it. That's a harsh statement, but when we're talking honor, we do actually have to get a little harsh here. The reason this is helpful is it does actually show very directly the discipline and the commitment to your path and your life you have. Entities have a great deal of respect for that discipline and that commitment. This actually makes working with entities easier. On the flip side, if you're faking it, they can see through us. They know you're faking it, and you've just shown yourself to be a clown. And they know that really they can't trust you because you're sitting here trying to present as this honorable authority figure, and you're not. You're a joke. You're an absolute joke. That doesn't mean that they won't work with you, but it's not going to be as easy, and they're not going to be as keen to put as much effort in either, because you started this entire thing by making a joke out of it. And that does really, really kick in there quite a bit and very, very difficultly. But it's been interesting because myself and about 6 others have been trying to document and record this phenomenon as much as we can. And it's been tricky, but over the 15 years, like 98% of the time, we can see a good, solid improvement in entity work when the person actually adheres to a form of honor and they live with it and they cultivate that and that discipline. And that's always been a truly fascinating thing for me. And that alone, I think, would be enough reason to make sure a mage is cultivating a solid honor code that they live by. Two, you know it. And this is important. You remember when we were talking about our words and how if you're lying to yourself, you start diluting the very power of your words because your subconscious doesn't believe what you say because you've spent so much time lying to yourself? Honor can work the exact same way. If you cultivate that discipline and you know what you live by and you work to live by that day in and day out, anytime you do magic and you step in to do spell work of any kind, anytime it's motivated by that sense of honor, it empowers it, it pushes to it, and it drives it further, making your spell work naturally more potent because both, again, your conscious mind and your subconscious mind are going to line up perfectly because this is who you are. Both your conscious mind and your subconscious mind know this for a fact. And even in the face of doubt or fear, you can you can teach your subconscious. Okay, we talk about how powerful doubt is and how it can kill your magic, right? If you teach your subconscious that day in, day out, you will live by what you view as your honor, and that is the ultimate deciding point, regardless, that you will act honorably in the face of fear, you will act honorably in the face of doubt, you will act honorably regardless of what challenges, darkness, or bumps in the road the world can throw at you. Your subconscious will actually learn that lesson to the point where even when you doubt magic, your subconscious will still push through the doubt. Now, that is not an easy thing to cultivate. That is not something you're going to cultivate in a week. That's not something you're going to cultivate in a month. It's probably going to take you a couple years if you've never attempted to cultivate it. And it's something you must continue to cultivate your entire life. Because the second you stop cultivating it, the second you stop practicing it, you lose its benefits. I guarantee you, you'd lose it inside a week. It's crazy. It's a hard road, but it's worth it in my mind. It's from the magical benefits. I would say it's worth it for the character of a person, but okay, we know how I was raised. I mentioned that earlier, and you know what? Not everybody may agree with that, but honestly, the benefits to a mage and their magical practice is quite amazing. All right, we've got something popped up in here. So it's a astronaut. So honor can differ depending on our sense of right and wrong. Yes, it absolutely can. Um, you do have to figure out what is right and what is wrong, and it's honestly that's something you're going to be meditating on your whole life. Um, and different situations will pop up, and there are times where what you think you know will be challenged. What I think I know has been challenged many, many times in my life, and it can be a trick. It really can. The younger generation, they try to make it very black and white, left or right. They try to make it very rigid. It's really not. The scenarios can change. I mean, if you were to ask me, is it okay to go up and shoot a guy? No, it's absolutely not okay to go up and shoot someone. That's a bad thing to do. At the same time, if you were to ask me, is it okay to defend my family from someone breaking into my home? Absolutely. Does that defense mean that I might use a loaded weapon to defend my family? Absolutely. But the situations do take some context, and it's more than um, there's nuances to it. You see what I'm saying? There are nuances to it. And those are nuances that a person needs to meditate on every day. And you don't do this by necessarily meditating on the situations, though it can help if you know you might be put into a situation or some kind. That's something you could definitely meditate on. More importantly is to know you, to know what you stand for, where you stand, why you stand there. Why is that important to you? You need to know the why, not just is it right or wrong. You need to know the why. And yeah, I mean, that needs to mesh, right? there's definitely things in the world that I disagree with. And there's definitely countries or locations in the world where there are basic social laws I disagree with so much, I will never set foot in those countries. And I definitely won't ever live there. And that's kind of the thing. So even when you're looking at the basic law and order of the land, you got to ask yourself, is this actually where I want to be living? Right? Because you need to, I would say, align yourself as close as you can with the laws of the land, because regardless of your honor, the laws of the land will have an authority over you. That's just the way it is, point blank. So you also got to kind of teeter in that. That's not to say that, that if you absolutely believe the laws of the land are wrong for whatever reason and you're willing to, say, I'm not going to follow it. Yeah, okay, great. You could also go to jail for that. Your honor will not protect you from the legal system. Um, that's just one of those little things. But can you live happily knowing that you took that stand? That's a question. Um, I so yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer. You never hurt the innocent. I'm a huge believer, and I absolutely get disgusted anytime I see someone hurting the innocent. So there are things like that. Aylin's got a big one here. Very blunt and direct comes with being autistic. Well, I'm not autistic, but I'm blunt, direct, and I make people cry all the time. So I'm insistent about having conversations when people do conversations about when people do favors for me about how they want me to pay them back. Most of my experience there is with people saying, "Don't pay me back, pay it forward," because they don't need any kind of help I can give them and feel that it's important to respect their wishes. But I take that very seriously, because even if they don't want to be paid back directly, it's still as you still carry the debt. You're absolutely right. You do still carry the debt. And if you have asked them and they said they don't want anything, they want you to pay it forward, you are still carrying the debt. You need to pay it forward somehow, some way, and help someone else. At that same time, there is also the argument and the debate, because the pay it forward concept is a really cool concept. Don't get me wrong. But there's also the question in there, did you actually pay the debt? Because technically speaking, with my responsibility to my fellow man, if my neighbor helps me with my yard, and my neighbor over here, this old lady, she needs help with her yard, and she knocked on my door, I'd have helped her anyway. Right. So that's not really paying it forward. That's not really clearing that debt, because I'd have helped her anyway. So that's kind of the problem with being an honorable person, is it's really hard to pay it forward to clear the debt. Instead, what I do is, if my neighbor's like, "Oh, you don't owe me anything, don't worry about it." Okay. I will wait for the opportunity to pay it. I will not forget the kindness that they have given. And when they need me, I am there. No questions asked. I am there, because I do owe them. That's the way I see it. I literally have a file of everything I owe, every favor I owe, every kindness I owe. Also have a folder of every debt owed to me. Um, so yeah. Let's see. So yeah, that would be the best way to handle those, particularly Aylin, that I am aware of, or that's how I handle it. There are individuals I know that if once the person says you don't owe me anything, they consider it clear. I've never been able to do that. And at least from the philosophies I was raised with, which are largely Asian in nature, can't deny that. Um, that's not clear. Point blank, it's not clear. So, that has something to do with the philosophies and everything that I was raised with, and I don't deny that. That's why you do constantly have to sit and meditate on it and figure out where you stand. And you should meditate on yourself and your who you are daily. Absolutely, you should freaking meditate on who you are and where you're going and the person you want to be daily, right? So with that, insights and wisdom do come. And those are, that's just one of the ones that over the years, it's never shifted for me. I'm not going to say anyone who disagrees with me is wrong or how dare they're dishonorable. No, 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 because in my mind, that makes that's just stupid. That's just stupid. Yeah. So yeah, those would be some things. Immortal, how do you defend yourself in conversations without going into arguments? Not getting emotional. Well, that's about self-control and discipline in and of itself. I don't personally, I work very hard to not get emotional in situations at all. Right. Also, I don't really have a high sense need to defend myself. Um, I am who I am. I live as I am. I don't lie. I don't cheat. I don't steal. And if someone tries to slander me, most of the time I have no reason to give a damn. I really don't. It's one of those things because the people in my life that are closest to me who know me, they're not going to believe it. And if they heard it, they're going to come and ask me for context, in all honesty. So yeah, I really don't have a reason to deal with most people in those things. And I don't really worry about it. There are plenty of people who try to call me names or something at different times in a discussion, but that's just showing me who they are. Because if all they can do is get mad and yell names and stuff, that's showing their ignorance, not mine. And yeah, for me, it's been one of those things. I stick to the conversation. I stick to what's going on. I stick to what I view to be right or wrong, and I try to stick to an intellectual, thought out discussion. And I yeah, I don't attack their character. I don't attack them personally. It's I want to have a discussion, if that makes sense. All right. So yeah, there are a few quotes like I let's see if I can find those here real quick. There are a few quotes that I did remember from Modern Bushido that I wanted to go through here that might help with some ideals. Um, yeah, Samuel Coolidge, our own heart and not other men's opinions forms our true honor, right? See what I mean? So it's that knowing your heart concept, because you're the one that's got to live with you regardless, right? No matter what happens, you're the one that's got to live with you. Because you can never outrun yourself, period. Um, Even if you take a coward's way out and try to shorten the time you're on Earth, you can't outrun yourself. You'd still have to deal with eternity on that one. The glory of a great man must always be measured against the means they have used to acquire it. That was a La Rochefort, I think. Um, this one's Icelandic proverb. I do love this one. He who lives without discipline dies without honor. You cannot have honor without discipline. Okay, so first, straight out of the gate, if you want to cultivate a life of honor, cultivate a life of discipline. That's hard. That is very hard to do because you actually do have to do the things. And in a world of comfort and convenience, focused and driven, that gets hard. We get lazy quickly. We really do. But I did always love that one. Uh, there's an Arabian one I like too. It was he who wants to sell his honor will always find a buyer. And that's pretty much simple. Like if you're willing to throw your honor away, you'll always find a way to do it. There's always an easy path to wealth or something like that if you're willing to throw your honor away to do it. Thing is, you'll never get your honor back either. So, you know, your honor is actually worth a lot more than that if you actually care about it. Uh, Trying to find that one. See, Socrates said the greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be. And that one's actually reflecting, actually be the good person, be the courageous person, be the respectful person that you pretend to be every day. And if you think about the ideal of shadow work is what we hide from people. We always put on a mask. Instead of hiding, instead of cowering and trying to put on a mask and be different things to different people, why don't you actually be authentically you and live as such? Be an authentic version of you all the time without apology. That's kind of what Socrates was getting at with that one. And I do like that one. Mark Twain actually had one. It was honor is a harder master than the law. And that one's one I have heard even at a young age where doing what's right can be a lot harder than even trying to navigate the legal system because the legal system actually has a lot of loopholes and little gray areas that you can loop around. Your honor doesn't really. You know if an action is right or wrong to you, and you know that, and you have to live with that. And because of that, it will haunt you, even if you get away with it. You know what I mean? It will still haunt you personally. So, all right, folks, that is kind of it on this. This is one where you really do. You need to sit down, you need to meditate, and you need to look at yourself. You need to understand who you are, who you wish to be, and you need to meditate on the concepts of right and wrong. There is plenty of craziness going in this world, plenty of craziness. And I personally would say anyone who would harm a fellow human being who is not harming another person, that's kind of a dick move to begin with and pretty much a dishonorable one. So there are definitely certain things within society that you choose to live in that I think most people would say, yeah, that's pretty standard. Don't go out and murder somebody, right? There are plenty of those. Uh, Currently speaking, we are recording, so I'm not going to answer that question, Ethan. But yeah, so there's, you know, sit and meditate with it. I'll answer it after we're done recording. Um, and figure it out and meditate on it daily. You will learn more about you, even while you consider what is right or wrong. But not only, don't just ask yourself, is this right or wrong? But ask yourself why and dive into the depths of why. Why do you view it as okay? Why do you view it as right? Why do you view it as wrong? Why? You need to understand that for yourself as well, right? It's not just as simple as this right or wrong. You need to delve into the deeper depths of why and why you hold that stance. One of the things my old mentor always told me is if you're going to draw a line in the sand and you're going to say, that's right, that's wrong, you need to be able to articulate it to another person and you need to be able to articulate it well. And that is kind of the standard I've always held myself to when I meditate. Not just oh well, I feel this is right or wrong, because we get a little wishy-washy into that, I kind of feel or think or no, sit down to the point you can pin it and articulate it to another person, not just yourself. You can make it make sense to someone else, right? And I mean, if you're dyslexic, if you're autistic, if you're a bad communicator, there's a lot of things. Like I'm dyslexic as shit. We all know that. That does make it harder to articulate. But you know what? Congratulations, you're a human being. You have an obstacle to overcome. You still have the exact same homework. Doesn't change your homework. You have to do it the same. All right. Everybody, I hope this has been helpful, and I do hope you give it a try. Because, like I said, if you can cultivate this in your life as a practitioner, it will show, it will amplify your magic. It will help you to tap into a strength within that subconscious that you cannot replicate via ritual or any other method. It's an amazing boost to your practice and your daily life for that matter. Even if you're not a practitioner, this can actually boost your daily life and make your daily life a little easier and a little less anxiety ridden. Because if you already know where you're kind of holding, where you're kind of standing, and who you are, you're not constantly bombarded by anxiety of what am I going to do if, what am I going to do if, what am I going to do if? Because very simply, you just take that moral compass of yours and it, okay, I know where to go. It simplifies life if you take the time to learn that and meditate on that, if that makes sense. Okay. So give it a try, folks. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is how you have to do it. I'm not going to tell you what is right, what is wrong for you. That's not my job. I'm not even remotely going to go down that path. I will tell you to sit, meditate, go deep into it, find out what you view as right or wrong, find out why, go to that deeper section of why, get to the point where you can articulate it well to another person, and have a civil discussion with them if you were to agree or disagree. And keep meditating daily on who you are and why. Okay. Hope this helps y'all. I know this is one that a lot of people in the community have had questions with, and I do hope it helps. All right. If you are watching this on YouTube as opposed to live with the community, there'll be links below. Check us out at the Working Dragon Mystic online community where you can join us for these topics live and ask questions like the individuals here have. And you can take part in the after questions, which are the questions like what Ethan has here that I can't answer for the recording. Okay. And you can also join us as a supporter at that community if you choose, which gives you access to the online school, live workshops, and a supporter only live feed where we really get into some interesting discussions there. All right. Till next time, everybody. I'm Drake. This has been Working Dragon Mystic. Take care. Bye-bye.